We all know about India as the jewel in the crown of the British Empire. But did you know that the first English people in India arrived over 150 years before Britain became an empire? Hello, my name is Lubaaba Al-Azami, and I am a cultural historian at the University of Liverpool, working on England's earliest encounters with India. In this 4-minute podcast, we will voyage through the seas of history to explore England's earliest arrival in India and the dramatic events of the first English embassy to those shores. It is a story that features a flamboyant ambassador, a curious carriage, and a thoroughly unimpressed empress. But first, what brought the English to India all those centuries ago? Certainly at a time when planes didn't exist, and travelling to those distant shores meant months at sea and the death of half your crew, it could hardly have been on a whim. Well, to understand that, our story begins in 1570 with the excommunication of Queen Elizabeth I by Pope Pius V. Now that created a break between England and Catholic Europe, an early modern Brexit, if you will. And much like today, England sought to compensate for the isolation and lost trade by expanding its trading networks beyond Western Europe. So, in 1592, the Levant Company was granted a royal charter. This company would lead English trade with the vast and wealthy Ottoman Empire. A few years later, in 1600, the East India Company was granted its royal charter. This company would seek to trade in the East Indies, including what was then Mughal India. A few years later, the first English ship, the Hector, arrived in India, with the well-travelled Captain William Hawkins at its helm. And so, the first East India Company merchants had arrived, intent on trading in Indian luxury goods, such as spices, textiles, and indigo dye. However, England was only a small trading nation, whereas India was a vast, wealthy empire with no interest or need for English trade. So how could they make it work? Well, in 1615, they decided to send along a formal ambassador from the court of King James I to the court of Mughal Emperor Jahangir to negotiate a trade agreement. The ambassador, Sir Thomas Roe, was a stiff diplomat with lofty ideals and more than a little self-importance. He arrived in India with pomp in late 1615 and remained until 1619. However, his embassy proved a resounding failure. So, what happened? Well, in short, the Empress happened. Jahangir's chief consort, Nur Jahan, was the most powerful of Mughal India's empresses. Soon after Roe's arrival, Nur Jahan procured his letter from King James I to examine it overnight. Before long, she had declared the English embassy under her protection. However, our ambassador found that securing a treaty meant impressing the Empress, and impressing the Empress meant plying her with rich and frequent gifts. The poor Roe lacked the means and scrounged together whatever he could. The one significant gift afforded him by his English king was a carriage. Yet this too proved inadequate to the Mughals' lofty standards. Jahangir had the carriage completely refurbished in velvets and silks and studded with silver nails, before presenting it to Nur Jahan. Thereafter, Roe's provision of gifts was akin to scraping. His memoirs are replete with complaints about lacking adequate gifts, yet being required to provide. And so, after 4 years, the ambassador left empty-handed, apart from a rich memoir detailing his engagements with the Mughals. Meanwhile, the Mughals remained so unimpressed with their first English emissary that Roe failed to even secure a mention in their records. So, a failed English ambassador, an inadequate carriage, and an all-powerful empress. England was not off to a great start in India. Perhaps that's why we haven't talked about that early period as much as we have about empire. But then, perhaps that's also exactly why we should talk about it.